So Jim, you've been part of, large organizations that have experienced a lot of internal growth. And when there's innovation, there's messiness, there's expenses, there's, challenges with, new endeavors. So should organizations think about balancing the institutional stability, yet giving, the ability for new breath, new innovation, and new business opportunities to be able to sprout?
Yeah. I mean, everybody wrestles with that. I mean, first of all, we have to acknowledge that everybody wrestles with that, and it's been acknowledged in every uh, business school course and book and lecture that success is a gilded cage. That once you've been successful doing what you're doing, you become more and more resistant to change, to adaptation. And you can look back to people like BlackBerry or Sony Walkman, or it's like, why didn't they think of the iPod? Why did they? They just get caught in, how
Kodak.
do I make a better Walkman the whole time, and they didn't lift their head up and look and see that whole thing.
Right.
And so I think it's one. There should be familiarity in this conversation. It goes back to little bets. Innovation are bets. And let's make a distinction right now. There's innovation and there's optimization. Optimization is taking something you're already doing and then making it faster or cheaper or less, labor intensive or whatever it is. That's about like Six Sigma and those different disciplines about how do we create optimization, and all of those things work, and they work well, and you can look across the fruited plains of institutions of all kinds and shapes, and they've embraced those and been successful. But true innovation requires, I think, because this is where this is my opportunity to opine. It requires a certain amount of isolation. It requires that you absolutely not only say the words, but you actually demonstrate the behaviors around acceptance of failure. Going back to those 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Every single thing that you do in that isolation zone around innovation is going to be accretive eventually. Whether it's we should do this or we should make sure we never do that. It requires a different leadership. It requires a more than any other type of leadership. It depends upon curiosity. The people you ask to be a part of anything innovative must have, and this is, Justin, I'm sure has a number of insights that he can point to here, but they must demonstrate and be rewarded for and protected against any curtailing of curiosity. And then I think the thing is that it requires a understanding of nonlinear growth. What did I read at one point that Amazon lost money every year for the first 15 years of its existence or something. But it was purposeful, and how Bezos was looking at that organization. I think the Netflix people, I remember an interview with the CEO or founder of Netflix, and he's like, "We didn't call the company Movies on CDs." We knew in the beginning the whole point of this business was in streaming. It's just there wasn't an infrastructure to the household that would rely on it. So how did we get in position? How did we get under the basket and open with our hand up? So when that happened, we were in position to take advantage of that. So I think without without curiosity, without isolation from your day-to-day operations, separate from your people who are engaged in optimization, without acknowledgement that this is a bet, and we're taking and we're going to right size it so it doesn't sink the battleship. And it requires, knowingly and intentionally finding people and supporting curiosity. I think you do those things, and I think over time, because that's the other factor, it takes time to make 10,000 bad light bulbs. you know, you can't just hurt. You can't like, well, I made one bad one now. If I get 10 people making 10 bad ones, or if I get 1,000 people making, then no, it takes time. It's like cooking your Thanksgiving turkey. You can't cook it at 1,200 degrees for an hour. I hope did that make any sense?
No, absolutely. No, I think that was, fantastic. I mean, like, I think that the struggle is, if you're only focused on the bottom line, and you see, an expense, like that expense, is it an investment or is it, just a short-term thing holding back the progress of the organization? And if you look at, a lot of the culture, it's like we're very short. We can at times be very short-sighted and look at like, okay, what was the most recent quarterly earnings, and how do we improve it, right? So being able to step back and look at all these other variables, super important. I think you did an excellent job outlining those.